Hello, everyone. This is my persuasive speech on the financial barriers that millennials, Gen Z, and eventually Gen X will have to face and overcome. I found out the other day that 31% of Gen Z adults are still living with their parents because they cannot afford to pay for their own space, and 25% of adults are living in a multi-generational household in order to live comfortably, which rose from just 9% 5 decades ago. Not only that, but student loan interest rates have risen from the time of the millennials, so much so that they have 13% more debt than the millennials on average, with the median value of that loan being 14% higher than that of the millennials. On top of all this, nearly every contestant looking for employment right now is also a degree holder. And with this plethora of degree holders vying for positions within companies, these companies are raising their standards for even the lowest paying positions and requiring experience in that field that is impossible for young adults graduates to have at that time. Prospects aren't even high for Gen Zers if they happen to get a position, however, since statistics prove that millennials are making about 20% less than baby boomers. And that's with taking a matched age timeframe of each generation into account. Altogether, millennials and Gen Z face more financial difficulties than their parents did in their 20s and 30s, which include higher student loans, soaring home prices, sky-high rents, and lower wages, which leaves it nearly impossible for them to make it on their own, and a failure to launch is almost inevitable. To begin, home prices are way higher than they should be right now, leaving young adults, even those who have degrees and good job prospects, hopeless that they will ever own a home, according to many accounts taken by CNN. Even rent is affected by a shortage of homes, and as the demand increases, so does competition and thus pricing. Government data shows that in recent years, homeownership amongst people between the ages of 15 to 34, the age range is in which people normally buy their first house, has fallen to its lowest level in decades. Why is this? Well, we all know that there was a 2008 financial crisis that led to job loss and company closures. Less money going around meant people stopped buying houses, and the construction for new houses stopped as well. This was good because the price for the houses had reached an all-time high, but it meant more competition for the housing market in the future. This problem of housing shortages across the US has not since been resolved, leaving the next generation with more competition than it can be dealt with. This graph here shows the progression from 1970s to the present and how much you can see that it has spiked with the economy. And this graph is a close-up version of the previous graph showing that there was a dip in the prices for housing in the year of 2008, and afterwards we had an incline in the prices, and even though it has taken a dip since, look at how high we are in the present time. Here too is a graph that shows how many houses we were building at that time, and look how much it crashed in the year of 2008. Nobody had any money to buy any houses, so the construction completely stopped. And thus, that means that there are very few houses being built for the next generation, which means higher competition and higher prices. Even though this has improved slightly over the years, it's definitely not as high as it used to be, and that's definitely something that needs to be fixed. Secondly, we compare the income in the economy of the baby boomers with that of the income of millennials and Gen Z. In this economy, millennials and Gen Z make way less than the previous generations. It used to be a plausible dream to graduate college, get a nice paying, comfortable job, and buy a house by the time that you were in your late 20s to early 30s. Now people from these age groups have given up on the idea of ever owning a home, much less having children, due to the financial burdens of everyday life. Why have wages changed so much in so little time? Millennials and Gen Z were always told that in order to get a good job, a degree was needed, and thus we have more and more people go into college to get degrees with the hope of a brighter future, resulting in inflation and higher student loan rates. As more people get degrees, companies have numerous advocates for positions with equal qualifications, and therefore they raise their standards to the near impossible. Most positions require experience from the get-go, which is hard to get when you aren't even given a chance. And the wages are lower because there are now more people that are able to fill those positions. As with everything in life, the more of it there is, the less value it has. Lastly, Gen Z especially has an enormous amount of student debt upon graduating college that is even more crippling when job prospects are so low. As said before, Gen Z has on average about 21,000 in debt after leaving college, while millennials only had to contend with about 18,000 or less. This gap gets worse as you compare older Gen Zers with millennials versus younger Gen Zers with millennials. This means that Gen X will have much more financial burden than Gen Z currently has. As prices for education increases, people will be forced to take out more student loans and in larger amounts than the previous generation in order to meet those bills and get themselves through college. These costs that are required for a person to get themselves through college has led 15% of college graduate Gen Zers to admit that the cost of college was far greater than the benefits. Enrollment in undergraduate four-year programs has dropped by 2.7% in the spring of 2022 compared to the year before. More and more people are gravitating toward less time-consuming certifications and associate's degrees rather than bachelor's, largely because of the costs. Putting all of this data together, these financial burdens of housing prices, mortgage and rent, student loan costs and interest rates, and the struggle to find employment that pays well enough to meet these financial demands are an indescribable weight to bear for Gen Z, and especially so when you consider what the next generation may need to contend with. In order for change to happen, however, the world needs to know the change, and the voices need to be heard amongst those who have to bear the financial burden in the first place. For our own sakes and for the sake of the next generation as well, I hope we all have the bravery to speak up. Thank you so much for listening.